Hello and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Mignot. This is part of my 29 Days of Magic series where I interview an amazing Black woman every single day for Black History Month. And today I am delighted to have Tamara Houston, who is the founder and CEO of Iconmann. It's such an incredible story. You are going to absolutely love it. Please take a listen. Hey Tamara, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Lauren. How are you doing?
Oh, it's Monday.
That is
Making
true.
it all come together, interviewing people like crazy, the huge. But I'm delighted to have you on the show, and I can't wait for folks to hear your story. So as you know, podcast starts off the exact same every single time. So, Tamara, what was your first job?
My first job was Burger King. There we go. Yes, that was my first job. And the reason that I pause on that is in that being my first job, I had this very unrealistic expectation that I would get this job in high school. I actually got it to help pay for some extra cheerleading gear that my mother said was not essential, but of course I felt it was very essential. And I decided
Of
to
course.
show her by getting a job. And I thought I would get this job and they would automatically put me on the cash register. And they started me off as a dishwasher. Now, I don't know if you've ever been behind the scenes of a fast food restaurant and specifically the dish side of it, but
Oh
it's not
boy.
beautiful
Nope. Nope.
by any consideration. So I think I lasted, and I'm not ashamed to say this, I lasted, I think, a couple of hours before I called my mother crying and telling her that maybe I didn't need that gear after all.
Wow. So a whole 2 hours you lasted.
And I feel like that's being generous. A whole 2 hours.
And how old were
Now
you at this point?
I was probably like 15 or 16, whatever the legal age is that you can. I think probably 16 that you can get, a little part-time job. Now, looking at it in hindsight, I have to say, on one hand, I just love and applaud my mother so much for her allowing me to have this experience and leaning into acknowledging that it was not right for me and saying okay. And then there's the other side where I'm like, you know what, she should have made me stick that out. So, you know.
Well, there is the thing about it that allows you to learn about what you can do and what you cannot do. And when you're like, you know what? Lesson learned, I'm out. So I wholeheartedly understand. So, okay, so you go from being like, you know what, this fast food stuff, not my jam, to the incredible business you have right now. So what was that career journey like?
I would, to back up, I'd say you're definitely right. It's like you learn what you do not like, is what that experience at Burger King. And then it really focused me on thinking about what it was I really wanted to do. Like I knew that was not that working at Burger King was ever a career choice, but in thinking about the next time that I would be in a place of employment in a substantive way, what that atmosphere, that environment needed to be. So it really helped me without my even realizing it at the time, start to create my list. And my first, if you will, real position came my senior year of college during my internship. I knew by that point in time that I think like a lot of people really was fascinated with fashion and apparel, that fashion, in its greatest form can be a form of art and expression and how it empowers people and, just creates spaces for us to move in. So my senior year of high school, I was a business and merchandising major, and we had to ideally leave the city or the state to do our internship, and that was to help you with life skills. I selected going to New York City, where I interned with Betsy Johnson.
Oh,
Everything about that environment was completely different than my Southern upbringing. From seeing people for the first time with full body art, and piercings and different color hair and all of this. But it was such a creative space, not just their personal as the canvas, but the work that we were doing. And so I interned with Betsy, and my senior year, she and Mandy Black offered me a position on the design team. And that was, I guess you'd say, my start.
Wow. Okay, so you start with Betsy, so you're interning at Betsy Johnson, and then what happens?
Starting with Betsy, I worked there for a number of years. And as I said, I was blessed to be on the design team, which means that I worked on our ready to wear line, Ultra, which is Betsy's, if you will, kind of couture line or higher end line. And then also on the fashion shows each season, which was by far my favorite.
Oh, I'm
In the
sure.
space, oh my goodness, it's like, because you meet so many people. And it's one of those interesting things how, if you really look at your life, I think for a lot of people, you'll see that the things you do prepare you for the next step. It's not always 100% apparent, but it does. So, working on the fashion shows and the Ultra collection, we would have clients, Lenny Kravitz, Steven Tyler from Aerosmith. We did like their custom pieces. And then, of course, the fashion shows, we had all of the starlets and wonderful actresses that attended the shows. I always found this incredibly fascinating because I'm a fan, always have been, of old movies. For me, you give me a 1930s, 40s Cary Grant, Irene Dunn, Myrna Loy, Ginger Rogers movie, and I am all things full N.
Awesome.
And I would always seek to find a way with Betsy to incorporate some of that in our collections. You pair that with my also loving to read, and just through, I think, happenstance, it's almost like a serendipity moment where the things that I was reading was about the entertainment industry. And it was about old Hollywood glamour and the people behind the scenes who made these starlets into household names. And if you recall, the old Hollywood system was one where they really basically took someone, from obscurity and created this entirely new persona. So you would have a Norma Jean who overnight becomes Marilyn Monroe. And to that end, I found that incredibly intriguing because in some way, that's what I was doing at Betsy. Am not a Betsy Johnson customer historically. And what I mean by that is, I'm very monochromatic in my dressing, classic silhouettes, trousers, blouses, etc. But I knew how to identify the Betsy consumer. I knew how to identify what her wish fulfillment was by way of quality, price point, and also emotionally what she wanted that garment to convey for her, that psyche. And I realized that those were some of the same elements that were used in the entertainment industry. So about 4 or 5 years into Betsy, I decided to apply to William Morris. And by that point, I was aware that, everyone from Michael Ovitz to David Geffen, had gone through this very famous mailroom. And I went from being in design at Betsy to pushing a mail cart in Beverly Hills. So that was quite a life change.
Wow. So what happens? So folks all start in a mailroom, and then what happens? Because I'm always fascinated by hearing the story about folks who start in a mailroom and then end up becoming like super agents. But obviously that's not for everybody.
It's not, and that's the purpose actually of the mailroom. It is the ultimate weeding out process because you do multiple interviews, to get into this, to push a mail cart. And then it's really about what is your motivation and your survival skill, and more importantly, your go get 'em energy. Because there is no, at least with William Morris, there was no trajectory that says that after 6 months in the mailroom, you will automatically be placed on an assistant's desk. No, it was you had to earn your way out of that mailroom. So the purpose would be if you're pushing carts, you find a agent's desk that you can do morning, afternoon assistant work on as a floater, if you will. Then you are reading scripts and doing coverage. The idea is that you are learning the business from the ground floor, and you're finding a way to align yourself strategically inside of the company and make yourself indispensable.
Mm-hmm.
And in the space of doing that, then you start to learn the business. You become an assistant, you become a coordinator, and then you get promoted to agent. My journey was a bit different in that I knew from the moment I came into the business that I wanted to be a manager. And the reason for wanting to be a manager is that the business had grown to such a degree from, or pace from the days, if you will, of a Marilyn Monroe, that agents, for the most part, have a roster of about 60 plus clients. There is no way for one person to work diligently in crafting the full model of who someone could be within this business. That really fell to the responsibility of the manager, who would have a smaller roster and you're more hands-on with all parts of a client's success, be it selecting their agent, their publicist, their lawyers, the projects that they're doing, the trajectory. And that's the part that interested me most, was in that overall build of how you work with talent. So my focus was always management, but understanding no one in their right mind would say, hey, you were a fashion designer. I think I want you to helm my career. So, if you will, William Morris became my grad school.
Ah, love it. Absolutely love it. And so what did you learn in grad school?
What I learned in grad school is I learned not to give up. In some ways, I go back to the Burger King example. I walked into Burger King as a 16-year-old and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I was like, I'm done with this. William Morris, I walked in the door. It was without a doubt the hardest thing professionally that I had ever done in my life up to that point. If you can imagine, when I was in design at Betsy, I had a team of 30 plus people, and fashion was it was a different energy. This was one of you are making $400 a week before taxes or something like that. You are up probably at 6 or 7 in the morning, catching up on reading scripts or doing coverage. And then you are pushing a mail cart or on someone's desk, and you're dealing with the high, big volume stakes and personalities that come in with that. And at the end of the day, you probably get in the car around 10 something at night, only to go home and read scripts and write that coverage up before you go to bed. I share all that to say there were a lot of nights that I cried in the parking garage.
I can
Yet
see how this
I
would
didn't
happen.
give
My
up,
God.
but I didn't give up. I didn't make that phone call. Betsy was so wonderful because she said, you can always come back. So in some ways,
Oh.
it was like my mother, she's like, if you decide it isn't what you want, we're here. And while I knew that was an option, I did not make that phone call. I was at a place in my life where I said, no, this is the decision that I've made. And I don't know if it will net or when it will net, but I'm locked in and I'm committed to this. So it took me some time from, 16, but eventually I learned the lesson of locking in.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So I'm on the edge of my seat. Did you make it to manager?
Absolutely.
Of course you
Absolutely.
did. Of course you did. You're a Black woman. I had no doubt. I mean,
You make that you make that you have that conversation with God, and you
mhm.
promise to take the next step and do the work. And the vision was clear. So in my exiting William Morris, I was recruited to go over to Sanctuary Music Group, where I was director of management for film and television on all of our music clients. And that was a wonderful experience because we got to work across genres. But in the midst of that, I was also able to bring in actors, which was the first time for the company. So the first person we brought in, or I brought in, was Idris Elba. I had seen his,
Man,
yes,
man.
yes, I'd seen his work many years before, and I believe it was a Catherine Deneuve film that kind of always stayed with me. And in speaking to Alexa Fogelman, who's this famed casting director here in the business, and she just has such an amazing eye. And I would always say to her, Alexa, if there's anyone that really just captures you, please let me know. And she sent me the tape. That's before digital, of course, and links. But she sent me the
Hmm.
tape on this gentleman who had come in to audition for Brown Sugar. And she said he was not going to get the role because he was not right, but she thinks there's something about him that's incredibly special. And I saw it, and once again, things clicked. I realized, not immediately, but something about him was very familiar. And then I realized it was the actor from the Bell Mammon piece that I'd seen many years ago, actually, when I was at Betsy Johnson. And that I take all of these things as signs.
Definitely.
So yeah, so you dive in, you create the opportunities to meet and to do your pitch. And we worked together for a very long time. And it's just, you knew from the moment of meeting him that he was not only a star in the true space of a movie star, but he was a visionary. And so Idris was the first actor we brought in. Then I brought in Star Jones through her time at The View and negotiating afterwards. And that was, you get to learn all these wonderful lessons. I think I learned an extra tier about female strength and empowerment from her, and resilience, which was, I say that everyone that we encounter teaches us, a lesson in one way or the other. So there was, very grateful to her in a million ways. Then music decided to do its bust. I think that was during the time that we were having a problem or delay converting to digital.
The streaming and
And so a
everything.
lot of things were being downsized. And something like, our department of urban music, and the specialty was one of those cost cutting, infrastructure changes. And in the space of leaving there, I remember Idris was the first client who called and said, wherever you go, I go. Then Angie Stone followed, Blue, the pop group who was like the version of NSYNC in the UK. And it was just all of these wonderful opportunities. But then I started to really slim down the business and focus more so on the management of who we were with regards to actors and writers, because that was my motivation for getting into the business.
Right.
And, I thought at that moment in time that all was set and we're off and running. And for 3 years, I think as definitely as Black women or as women in general, we understand the ratios of, startups that fail. They are triple, almost, than those that succeed. And so you keep your head down and you keep working. In the space of keeping your head down and keep working, I would say one of the greatest things, at least I'd say mistake that I made, is that you sacrifice a lot of yourself,
Hmm.
in that you do not realize when you are getting to a space of being burnt out, or that the idea of balance has not come into place. And so I encountered that about 3, maybe 4 years into growing this company, is that I needed a breather. And I also in that space needed, I think, a reshifting of my vision. Because at that point, I had clients that were doing multi-million dollar films. I had clients who were also in the middle of very public crises, professionally and personally. And so when you are doing all things to, if you will, keep the house from burning down, the last thing that you have time to do is manage your own wellness.
Right.
And it was in the space of that that I decided to just more so shift landscape, to give myself some time. So I moved to London, and those 8-hour difference between London and Hollywood gives me time in the morning to actually sit and meditate, have coffee, walk in the
Breathe.
park, breathe. And in that space of breathing, I remember asking God, tell me what it is that I'm supposed to do, because what I feel is that placing all of my energy in growing people to not necessarily become the best versions of themselves, or to, put out all these fires, is not necessarily what my calling is supposed to be. And as I've come to learn in life that when you genuinely ask one question, it begets another question and another question. It's not, I've never to date experienced that life goes, here's the answer. It's more so of a journey. It's almost like The Alchemist, the Paulo Coelho book. You got to go on this epic journey.
Yes.
And to date where we are, that journey led me to create Iconmann. So that's where we are.
That's incredible. And I feel like there's 5 podcasts here alone. I obviously have to ask you about a question about Mr. Elba.
Of course.
We can't just casually drop that in there and be like, let's see what happens. So were you working with him when The Wire was filmed, or this was or after that?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So, yes, then as well. Mm-hmm.
And was he DJing at that point too, or is it that you were handling most of his acting stuff?
Idris has always been a DJ. He started, I believe it was his uncle who used to DJ in London. And he would be, Idris used to carry his crates. When he, decides to write the book and tell the story, the reality is, in his heart, he is a musician. And acting is that, dare I say, that fallback plan that he just happens to excel at.
Right. Very interesting. We'll have to talk more about some over cocktails next time I'm in LA or you're in New York.
Listen, I already told you, martinis at the Carlisle. I already told you.
This is true. And yes, I know. It happened sooner rather than later, especially as a result of this. So, and it's interesting to work with Star Jones, because I feel like I remember very firmly that time in her career, and so I'm really glad to know that she was being guided by a dope Black woman through that period. So I tip my hat to you for that.
Yeah, Star is a dope Black woman. She is a self-made person. Nothing was handed to her, and she's someone who set out to live her best life on her terms. And when that didn't go 100% according to plan, she took the licks that she needed to take, and she recalibrated. I think, as we all have to, right?
Of course.
She recalibrated and said, where's my accountability in this? And where do I really want to be in my life? And she took that time and she asked those hard questions and she did the hard work. And, I think we see now, Star and I, we no longer work together, but, she knows that I champion her, and I look at what she's doing on divorce court. I look at, the happiness space where she is in her personal life. And you go, that's the journey, that's the journey, but we all have to be committed to doing the work. And so I, like I said, learned so much from her.
Yeah, it is very much about doing the work, being accountable, and taking those hard hits. Sometimes we all have to do. I think sometimes it's funny, like when I read your 29 Days of Magic, I deliberately open up to all age ranges because I want those different perspectives, and it's so fascinating to hear young folks, Gen Z especially, talking about what their journey has been like, and what they're hoping it will be, and it's like, yeah, you're going to hit a couple of buzzsaws. And if you're not girded for those buzzsaws, those can knock you off a cliff very, very quickly. Because the thing about learning how to hold on is the only thing that comes on through that experience. Because you can always find a way to pull yourself back up, but you have to be aware that you're going to get knocked down. Like,
And you have to know that there is a pull up, right? When you said you have to
always.
be, that you have to pull yourself up, that no matter how dark this moment seems, and sometimes the moment goes on, the moment can go on weeks, months, etc. Like there's no end to when the moment's supposed to be, but you have to know, you have to have a vision for yourself and a feeling that there is going to be a pull up, that you're going to come through this moment. When nobody else believes, you have to be the one, the holdout that believes and fights for that. Because without it, we know where that goes.
Yeah, we absolutely do. So speaking about all of that, and what an incredible career you've had. Um, what do you think you tell 18-year-olds, Tamara?
I tell an 18-year-old to commit to finding some places of stillness within yourself in order to hear what it is you really want, not the noise that social media is telling you you're supposed to want, not the programming of what your parents or society tells you that you're supposed to want. Once you have an idea, you don't have to have the full picture, but as long as you have the idea of what you want, lock into that. Lock in every single day. And when I say lock in, I mean spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Lock into that every single day, even in the smallest of ways. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, because I do believe that ultimately where you're supposed to be, you will be. The things that happen along the way in the journey are the effects that stretch us to make us prepared and ready. But just never lose sight of the vision that you have for yourself, is what I would say to the 18-year-old. I say that to the 20-year-old, the 40-year-old, the 50-year-old, because I think that, it used to be in our parents' times that people had one career. You went
Yep.
to university, you had a career, you never changed jobs, you retired, and there you are.
Yeah.
Now we are in this space, and it's so beautiful that we are able to have multiple lives, multiple careers within, this physical existence. So don't be afraid to pivot also when necessary.
Exactly. It's just a road. It is windy.
Mm-hmm.
It is unpredictable, but it's just a road.
Yes.
Like, you'll be fine. And however you get there, you get there. But you are on a road. You are on a path. And
Yes.
there will be obviously really easy parts. There will be some of the stuff that are very challenging. There'll be ones you're gonna have to take a bet on, but they're gonna get you to where you need to go on that journey. Just acknowledge it's not gonna be easy. And so before I forget, tell us more about Iconmann.
So Iconmann was one of those pivots, and my time in London and those conversations with self and with source of saying there has to be more, because I realized, I think I was lacking something personal to lean into. And in this space of what is more, it's like, well, what do you care about? I care about Black race consciousness and identity. Just the love that I have, like, I think, most people should have the love for their people and for their culture and their heritage, and wanting that to be framed in a positive way, because every single day that I look around, I realized how blessed I am that there are so many people doing magnificent things, and whether they are on the nightly news or an award show or not, and they're like me, they're Black people doing great things. And I said, how do we start to change the narrative of that, as far as making certain that it's amplified and not just being spoken through one specific lens that fits a media agenda. And it was that, I think that was the first thought, and then, yeah, I dismissed it. And then over the course of, I'm not sure, probably a year or two, things just started to come into frame for me. Whether it was clients going into rooms for auditions or fighting to get them into sessions where, in order for an Idris, to go into a room, someone compares him to Denzel instead of allowing him to be who he is, you know, or if it's walking into certain meetings with senior ranking Black men, and before we would start our meeting, because I'm a Black woman, and whatever comes with that, from a space of comfort and familiarity, they would share, you know, they would share how they had been misaligned in a meeting by someone outside the race. And my thought always used to be, shouldn't you speak to so and so? Because they're a Black man of kind of similar or senior positioning than you. I think they can understand your journey better than me. Um, but in the space of that, starting to realize that while that may be true, there was a lack of comfort and familiarity in that personal space of expressing that to another uh, Black man. And that, I remember, striking me as a bit odd. But then I think, once again, you start to observe and ask questions and engage people in dialogue. And what I started to realize is that we're talking about wellness, we're talking about how our community as a people come together. But what's happening is that Black men were never being spoken to really and championed. I thought about growing up in the South. I went to high school in Montgomery, Alabama. Black girls are encouraged. Black boys, for a space of protection, which no one explains, are referred to as boy, sit down, boy, shut up, boy, don't do this, boy, don't do that. It's almost like they are raised to be muted.
Right.
So then when they become these successful, when they defy all of the odds and become these successful individuals, of course they are not going to express themselves because they've never been encouraged and raised to express themselves. It's like what Michelle Obama spoke about when she said, we love our boys, but we raise our girls.
Right.
And all of that started to play into this overall narrative about the wellness and positioning of our people. Is that I realized, for me, is that as Black women, we have, anytime you put us together, we're going to gather, we're going to share, we're going to express ourselves. Like, it's going to turn into a whole vibe.
It always does.
It always does. We have award shows. I, have gone to the Essence Women in Power Luncheon here in Hollywood every year since it started. And it becomes this amazing outlet, this fellowship, this fantastic. And I remember one year, Richard Roundtree Pam Grier was the legendary award recipient. And Richard Gere presented to her. And in his remarks, he said, had I not been invited into this room, I never would have known this existed because they don't do this for us. They don't do this for Black men. And unbeknownst to me, I am sobbing because he said more in those remarks to basically say, who cares about us in this way of fellowship and love, that we can basically look at the next person and see a mirror of ourselves. And it's just an open arm and a hug. And no one's trying to be transactional or wanting anything from you. You just want to uplift and love and support. And I'm literally, tears are rolling down my face. And Miss J Alexander from Top Model is sitting next to me, and he grabs my shoulders and he's like, girl, what are those tears for? You about to do something? I was like, oh my God.
I think you are.
And, from that, it's, I'd say, so Richard Brown said, for that, the first Iconmann event was created in 2014. And we started really as a space, I worked my Rolodex, and 30 men across industries, entertainment, professional sports, finance, technology, etc., trusted me to enter a room where they could not bring a guest or a handler. They couldn't bring, yeah, they didn't even know who they were going to be seated next to. And from there, we grew into this amazing organic space, whether it was our men desiring to come together to do a response to the Trayvon Martin verdict, raising, a private film fund to send over 21,000 kids around the country, Black junior, senior level high school students to see the film Selma for free. Each year we would continue to gather, these amazing men. By this point, they're inviting and nominating other people to come into the room. To be in the room, you're vetted. One, more importantly, to see where you are in the space of us as a people. Are you living a life that is to uplift and create pathways and opportunities for others? And if you are, that type of fellowship is welcomed into the room. And from that, amazing things, businesses have grown. I remember, who was it, Tristan Walker, when he was launching Bevel. Now he is the first Black CEO of one of their of a Procter and Gamble, I think it is, or Unilever brand. He launched that at an Icon event. When President Obama's My Brother's Keeper was coming, Michael Stratmanis, who beforehand had been with Valerie Jarrett, announced the program in our room about 6 months before it launched. So many dynamic things happen in our Icon rooms. And over the past few years, we've started to expand that, as we are now with Oscars, into an all-encompassing opportunity. So we started off by honoring the former president of the Academy. We've honored Sam Jackson, Spike Lee, Ruth Carter. Everyone has been in our rooms, from the head of Marvel, Kevin Feige, to Kobe Bryant, from Angela Bassett to Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan, Shannon Sharp, like you name it. And the beauty of what this is we are honoring our greatest and our best, but we're doing it for us. It's not for a soundbite, and it's not for a transaction.
Fantastic. It's so necessary, so needed, and it's so incredible that you've created a space for Black men. What's been your kind of probably proudest achievement as part of Iconmann?
I'd say our proudest achievement was when we entered the content space, which we have a couple of new projects that we'll announce this year. But I'd say the content space, and then also the way that we've started to build bridges with the African diaspora. From a content space, our first project was 28 Men of Change, which was a Black History Month piece that we created with BET. We, my team and I, put together this idea that, Black History Month needs to be modernized. While we appreciate, of course, the shoulders on which we stand, there has to be a recognition of the men today who are transforming cultures and business. So we committed to identifying 28 of those men in the U.S. and also some abroad, including, Ndaba Mandela, the grandson of Nelson Mandela, Steve McQueen. We had Ray McGuire at the time. He was the global head of Citigroup. Steve Harvey. There were so many. Nile Rodgers, who just won a Grammy last night. So extremely happy for him. And what we did with this piece was we filmed original interviews, on-camera interviews, editorial, and also portrait photography that went into an installation. So every single day on BET's main channel and its sister networks, you would get a profile from one of these men to see how they leaned into their vision, their success. How did they lock in? What were their words of inspiration to others? We filmed this in such a short window of time, and we're so blessed to have partners that came on board. So that was exciting. The second thing within Icon where I look and say, my goodness, I didn't realize this would be an opportunity, was when the KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission of South Africa reached out to us and said that, we are seeking to touch Hollywood, and we would like to see if there's a relationship to be gained. So we became the U.S. agency of record for them. And this year we'll be announced as the U.S. agency of record for additional African countries for how they are touching Hollywood and collaborating on production deals and also investment opportunities on the continent. So I would say those would definitely be my two proudest moments so far.
Oh my gosh. So amazing. It's wow. You're just full of awesomeness, Tamara. Oh my goodness. Okay, so you've got all this going on. What do you do for Tamara? What does you do for self-care?
What do I do for self-care? The water is my go-to, which is probably why I live in California. But I always need to have time on the beach. And that's a sit, that's a breathe communing. I'm very much into personal care, so I'm, a frequent massage person.
Same.
I force myself to read, and when I say read, I'm not an audiobooks person. I physically need a book in my hand. And that means my phone is in, a different part of the house. And I just need to get lost in whatever those words are on the page. So those are some of the spaces that I have self-care. And I, probably say the mainstay of my life, of course, would be music. That is, I could probably live without everything except music. Yeah.
Amazing. Love it. I'm a big scuba girl myself. Tell me which fancy spa you want to go to, and I will be there. Because I've also realized that the whole act of it is the thing. It's not just, I can go somewhere and get a massage, but no, you want to go be in the environment that takes you away and transports you into this very cool, relaxing vibe, and you're there for a couple of hours. It's not just like wham bam thank you man for the massage. Like you need to have the full on experience for it to actually count.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that necessity is our five senses. When we talk about wellness, you do have to appeal to that. Like I'm a visual person. My olfactory, I burn candles all the time. Like that is a big thing for me. I walk into any space, the smell of it is going to get me, whether I'm coming back or not. It's like that probably tells you why Hotel Coast in Paris is one of my favorite hotels, because you walk in and it
love
is a complete.
Love that hotel. Oh my gosh, yes.
Oh, it's divine.
It's so amazing.
It's a complete transformation, but it's about the smell. It's about
right.
How it's about the lighting. I believe that, in this life, it's how we create moments for ourselves and moods. It really speaks to our wellness. So when you're talking about what makes a good spa, a great spa has all of that. To me, it's quiet and it's sensual. There's amber lighting. It's all of those things that transports you out of your present moment.
Yeah, they don't rush you. Physical. You don't feel like you're on a conveyor belt. Like I just had a really great spa experience at my favorite spa here in New York this weekend, and I just was like, "Oh, can I stay here all day?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, stay as long as you want." I'm like, "Okay." Because I was like, "Oh, I forgot I needed this." Because it's like, "Oh, all right, this feels delightful." Yeah. Back to spa. So we're gonna have drinks at Carlisle, then we're going to the spa. This spa that I just went to. So last question for you: do you have a give and or an ask of the audience? And this can be anything from a piece of advice to a book to read, to wanting people to follow you on social media. It could be anything you want.
My ask would be, do follow Iconmann on social media. It's at icon.man. And my give would be, if you have not had the opportunity to read or listen to The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, please do. It is a very short read, but it will bless you at any space of life that you're in. So that's The Prophet by Khalil Gibran.
Ah, wonderful. We'll put all those details in the show notes for folks to follow you at Iconmann and check out The Prophet.
Oh, and one more.
Go for it.
Sorry, I just remembered my new favorite indulgence. If anyone loves like a great, speaking of great feel good moments, is God Engineering, which is my new favorite leisure wear. It's all things, but it's God.engineering, and it's fantastic.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So those are my two.
Well, you have two awesome ones. I'm looking at that engineering right now. Oh, fancy. Okay, girl, you had me at the name. I love good, comfortable clothing and leisure wear. Tamara, you are such a delight and so much goodness and warmth and amazingness. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being on part of the Camp Podcast and being part of 29 Days of Magic. I want folks to follow Iconmann. Absolutely listen to that book. Check out God Engineering because the stuff is gorgeous. And so much more. But thank you so much for being part of the show.
My pleasure. Thank you, Lauren, so much for doing all that you're doing. I love your podcast, and martinis on me when I see you in New York. Okay.
Exactly. Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. Thank you so much. And that is our show.